up, Prof Mo? I'm Eduardo, and this is Monster Tutorials. In today's video, we're making those spooky animated tombstones. These are awesome to make your graveyard come alive, which I love doing here because all my neighbors have tiny little kids. So it's not gory, but it's nice and spooky. That's what we're making today. Let's go. Nice, huh? On this video, I'm going to make two tombstones. One is going to be one that you buy from the dollar store, and the other one we will make from scratch. For this tombstone, I'm going to use a dollar store tombstone. These are cool, they're cheap, but you need to reinforce them and everything so they work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this insulation foam and I'm going to cut two pieces of foam and make this tombstone, three layer stick. This layer plus two of the foam. I am using the little magic wand from Hot Wire Foam Factory to cut this foam. That looks good. Now I'm going to trace the tombstone all around this so we can cut these white pieces to the shape of the tombstone. And I'm using the cutter again for that cut. Next step, I'm going to glue these together. And I'm using just silicone. Let this set. With this tombstone, I'm going to do it from scratch. So what I did is I watched a movie that I really like, which is Nightmare Before Christmas. And on the first scene, when the song is going on, I looked to the graveyard and saw that tombstone. I thought that was really cool. I really liked this tombstone, so I took a picture of it, a screenshot, and printed it. And I'm going to transfer that design into a piece of blue insulation foam. I'm going to be using this kind of foam. This is just a half-inch insulating foam. And there's no special technique for this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking at this and kind of like guessing where it would go, and then we're going to cut it out and do all that good stuff. Now I want it to be this size, so this piece is going to have to match this piece. See, that is that frame that goes all around the tombstone. I'm going to cut this, and this will be the template for this one. This is the back piece because it's like a 2 or 3 layered tombstone. I'm using the hot wire to cut the shape out. Alright, I cut this out and now I need an extra skull, which I'm going to just shape right here and cut it out as well. Right, the assembly will go something like this. I'll put this piece here and this piece here. I need to cut a round piece for this, and then this skull goes on top like that. Cool, let's assemble this. I just need this little piece right here. I'm going to hold this aligned with toothpicks. Nice. Now this goes right here. And this piece goes right there. And we'll sculpt all that to its perfect shape. That looks good. Let it dry. These guys are set. They're nice and strong. This one as well. I put a piece of foam in the base to reinforce it because I need it to be about that wide. Okay, and you'll see why in a minute. I still have to carve this all the way. But I put some of the markings I want, like the RIP here and the date. I know where the eyes are going to be, so we'll carve that in a second. But first, I got this piece of wood from a pallet. And I'm going to use it as, going to cut pieces as the base for our tombstones. And we want them to be really stable. So for this one, I'll probably make it about a foot. How big is that? I make about 14 inches for this one and for the dollar one. For the dollar store one, probably like 16 inches, let's see. 18 inches. So 14 and 18, I'm just gonna go in the garage and cut it with a saw. I got these cut. So I'm gonna go spray paint them black with just a can of spray paint, just so that they hide a little bit better when we put them on the ground of the graveyard. So I'll do that in the garage. You don't have to see, it's just a spray paint. And the other thing I'm gonna do that's gonna take some time is carve this to look like that. So I'm going to use a Dremel, right? And I'm just going to carve the eyes out, the nose, the teeth and everything just as carefully as I can. And I'm going to use some sandpaper to smooth it out. To engrave the words here, I'm going to use the engraver from Hot Wire Foam Factory. I haven't used this guy, but it looks pretty cool. That's awesome. Let's do the date too. That looks great. Alright, so I'm going to do some of these cracks with the engraver. And let's do a few of the pieces where the cement or the concrete has chipped. So for that, just push on the corner and you get your pieces out, see? See? That looks awesome. Alright, let's keep going. That looks great. So now I'm going to take some sandpaper. I have different grits here and just go over it. Take some of these hard edges off, blend the two pieces of foam together, get these eyes all nice and rounded, and just finish it up so we can go to paint. That's looking great. So now I'm going to texturize it because, as you can see, that's really smooth, right? And it's supposed to be stone that has been weathered. So for that, I'm going to just spray it very lightly with water and put the heat gun on it, which will texturize the foam. Now, heating up this foam will release some nasty fumes, so I'm wearing my respirator. And that technique is basically to spray this with a very light misting of water. And then we take the heat gun and we heat up the foam until it starts contracting and expanding to give you that stone texture. That looks fantastic. Check out the texture. Looks like real stone. So now we go to paint. I am ready for paint now. So for the paint, I'm using this gray exterior. It's like paint and primer. I found it in the Oops section of Lowe's, and it was like 10 bucks, and it's gray, so that's a great deal. I'm going to mix it up with water on a ratio of 2 parts paint, 1 part water, and that's so that it fits through this cheap airbrush that I have right here. Now this can be very well painted with a brush, but since I have the airbrush and the compressor, I'm just going to do that. It'll make it a little bit faster. Right. These guys are dry now, the gray paint. They need a little bit of touch-up, and that's about it. Nothing major. So the next step is I took half water and half this acrylic latex, which is black. I'm going to spray so it gets caught in all the deep recesses like the eyes, nose, between the teeth, all the areas where the grime tends to accumulate over the years. I'm just going to spray all over, and if an area gets too dark, take a sponge and just wipe the excess off. Make sure it's a flat sponge so that it picks up only the high areas. These are looking great. Look at all the texture that came out. We're going to let that dry, but I'm also going to take one of these cheap disposable brushes and I'm going to paint inside the letters, inside the eyes, nose, and between the teeth. That gives it a little bit more depth. This is looking great. So I took a little paintbrush and I did the letters as well. So I went into the crevices and the cracks and did that. So we have the darks done. So now let's do the highlights, which will make this look even better. For the highlights, I'm taking just some, this is exterior latex, I think. Was left over from something we painted here in the house. I'm just going to put some right here, and then we're going to use this sponge brush. I'm taking some of this white paint on the brush and covering the brush pretty well, but then getting rid of all the paint. And now just very gently running it across the tombstone. I'll start picking up all those high areas. It'll look really cool. That's looking pretty cool. Let's get in here, get some of this on the inside. That is fantastic. I'm going to do the same to the dollar store tombstone. That looks good too. I think we're ready to animate these guys. The bases that I painted black are dry now. This was the pallet wood, right? And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a drill and just make 4 holes in 4 corners so that we can take this and stake it down with a tent stake through the holes. Okay, so that'll keep your tombstones from toppling over if they're top heavy, like the Nightmare Before Christmas one, wherever it is, this one, or from the help you with the wind in a windy situation. I'm just drilling those about 1 inch in. Those are done. Now we got a test fit our tombstone right on top of the base. So I'm going to be marking where the tombstone should go, and I'm centering it, just centering it across the base. That looks good. Now, first thing we're going to do is you have to decide which way do you want the tombstone to move. This way or this way, right? So once you decide on that, see, I like this side better, it's a little bit flatter. We're going to take one of these hinges. These are 1.5 inch hinges. There's a link below for this, and put it right there. So I'm getting this off so I can mark where the hinge goes. That looks good. I'm going to pre-drill some little holes, and we're going to mount the hinge. Now, since the tombstone is going to move this way, so we put the hinge this way so that the tombstone can move. Okay, and it'll be flush, flat on the piece of wood, and flush on the tombstone. That looks great. Now let's set this aside, and I'm going to mark where the hinge is going to go on this side for reference, and try to center it on the foam so that you can catch solid foam. Alright, so I know where they go. Right there. Now we're going to put the motor on this side. The animation is going to be achieved with these motors. These are 12 volt and they do about 5 RPM. They're really slow. There's a link below for these also. So the idea is that this motor is going to go mounted right here, and it's going to turn and lift the tombstone. So I'm going to be measuring to see how much movement I want from the tombstone. I also want the cables to come out the side where the hinge is. So I'm going to aim the cables this way. I'm going to mount this motor right about here. And this can be mounted with glue, and you have 2 tabs where you can put some screws or some nails. I would use glue and screws to hold it nice and steady. I'm also going to dig a little bit of a hole in the foam here to recess it just a little bit. Not all the way through, but just enough to be nice and sturdy, nice and snug in there. So for that, I'm just marking a little circle right there, and I'm going to recess that. I'm going to use my trusty Dremel tool to drill down about 1/4 inch. That is perfect. I'm going to glue that in and find 2 screws or nails that go all the way in. Now make sure to test your glues. So I tested this guy, and I tested this guy, and this guy. That says super glue, right? Those are the results. That one is this one. It ate right through the foam, so that's not good. This one is this one, so not good either. It's one of my favorite glues, but not for this. See, it made a hole right immediately. And then this super glue, which I thought was going to eat through the foam, is sitting right on top, nice and thick. Okay, so I'm going to use that glue. I also found some screws, and this is a short one for this backside, right? And a long one for this side, so it can reach and it won't go all the way through, so that's good. And you can put some glue on the screw as well, so it holds onto the foam a little bit better. Right, the glue on the motor. All right, nice and firm. Now we can put the screws in to the foam. Now remember, this is foam. It does hold well, but it is foam after all, so don't strip the holes or anything. Just gently do all these procedures. That's nice and tight. That's not going anywhere. And for the motion, I'm going to use a popsicle stick. So I'm going to use one of these. We're going to put it here so that it turns and it lifts the tombstone. So let's do that. I'm going to drill the hole just a little bit offset. There you go. Now we put the screw through there. Should fit snugly. Otherwise it will slip when your motor turns. And we put it on the motor. Now I'm going to mount this. We line up the holes that we marked before. And we're going to put some of this hinge screws in there to hold the hinge in place. Alright, so this is all secured, as you can see. What I'm going to do is solder the motor cables to a power adapter. This is a 9-volt power adapter. The motor is rated for 12 volts. Okay, so you can use any of these that you probably have laying around, as long as they say 12 volts and maybe like a half an amp or 500 milliamp rating. These are 12. I'm using a 9 for the slower motion, right? And what it's going to do is going to turn, I'll show you, and it's going to lift the tombstone up a bit. So first, let's secure this. I'm going to solder these guys. I'm sliding these cables over this little shrink wrap. And this tombstone is not going to be weatherproof, but this helps keep the water out, this little sleeve right here. So I'm going to slide it first. Don't forget to slide it first, because I already soldered it and didn't put the sleeve on and had to undo all the work. So now let's get this soldered. Here, this one goes with this one. And you can use electrical tape if you want to. That looks great. I'm going to take these guys and I'm going to wrap each one with electrical tape, and then we're going to slide that over. I'm going to slide the sleeve over the cables, and now we're going to take the heat gun and shrink it. Don't get the heat gun too close to your tombstone or you'll melt it. Now that we have this all soldered and secured, I'm going to just route the cables to the back this way, all the way down over the hinge and out this way so we can plug it somewhere. I'm just going to glue it here without restricting this movement, right? So this should be able to move freely. for extra security, I'm going to staple this right here. Right, that is secure. So this tombstone is pretty much done. I'm going to go set it up in the graveyard so you can see how it works. But first I'm going to do the dollar store one, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did to this one. I finished this. I did the same as we did on the other tombstone. These guys turned out awesome, right? Now let's see them in action before we go outside to the graveyard. That'll make for a spooky graveyard there. Let's go outside.